The next one, and of course, wise advice also about the 1 o'clock lunchtime was pretty spot on. I know a lot of you will be moving towards that, but let me also tell you that we have a very wonderful session coming up, which is, are we speaking the same language? Pretty, even metaphorically, that is what the session title is. And some of the finest exponents of the Bhasha are going to be up on stage, and I'm going to be welcoming them one after the other. I have also told you about the films that are being screened on the sea floor, and if you want to check what's on the right wing, you're most welcome. You have hopefully the schedule printed out for yourself. But ladies and gentlemen, let me now call upon the guests of the next panel, which is, are we speaking the same language? Where is Bhasha headed? The very first gentleman who I would like to invite is really a gentleman in the finest sense. We heard him in the inaugural session of the Literature Festival. Comes to us from the crown of the country. He is from Srinagar, an award-winning Kashmiri writer, the Sahitya Academy Award no less. May we put our hands together to welcome Mohammad Zaman Azurdah Sahab. Such a versatile person, screenplay he's written, and over 50 books. His essay collection called Essay is pretty acclaimed. And he's also written one short story collection, Urdu, and interestingly has a wonderful Karnataka connection, which I mentioned yesterday. Goka Kavrinda Hidu Anantmurti avarige our jote sambandhavanna itkondidda Azurdah Sahab is with us on the Bhasha panel. I'd also like to invite Sahitya Academy awardee who has written in almost every genre in Hindi. She's written 7 novels, 4 plays, 4 collections of essays, 1 memoir of fellow writers, 1 travel account, and 90 short stories. Mridula Garg ji, please, we welcome you on stage. Her novel Kaat Gulab was awarded the Zaman in 2004 and Miljul Man, the Sahitya Academy, in 2013, and have been translated into so many languages. I would next like to invite Subodh Sarkar, eminent Indian poet writing in Bengali, published 27 books of poems in 35 years, and again recipient of Sahitya Academy Award in 2013, visited so many countries. Dr. Sarkar teaches English at a city college, that is in Kolkata University, and he's currently the guest editor of Indian Literature, Sahitya Academy's flagship journal. The fourth panelist is a Tamil writer. She's a journalist and columnist and is the former editor of India Today, the Tamil edition. Her articles appear in so many magazines. Her work has been translated. Some of her famous books are The Guilty and Other Stories, The Silent Storm, and Birthright. Her more famous one, Cutouts, Caste and Cine Stars, The World of Tamil Politics, was, at least one political leader in Chennai did not take kindly to that at all. May we please invite Vaasanthi. Akash Vidagal, with special reference to the Hindi translation of her novel as Akash Ghar. She has won many awards, including the Gyan Bharati Award. May I invite Dr. Janaky Sreedharan, Associate Professor in the Department of English, University of Calicut, a bilingual writer. She writes on media and gender studies and has translated short stories from Malayalam into English and fiction from English into Malayalam. She's translated a critical work, Feminist Aesthetics, from English into Malayalam again, and has produced a documentary for Malayalam Doordarshan in 1997. Subtitled the documentary Maithil in 2010, Janaky Sreedharan is also a book reviewer. We really look forward to a fine panel on the Bhasha. Over to you.
Can I start? Hello? It's audible? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, to this session, which has been rather provocatively titled, very intriguingly titled too, Are we all speaking the same language? And where is Bhasha headed? As we had been discussing just before we came in for this panel discussion, the topic seems to be more symbolic rather than literal. Obviously, we all come from different linguistic backgrounds, and India's linguistic diversity is something which we have talked ad nauseum. At the same time, very often lamenting the fact that there is no one single tongue that unites us. Should we be bemoaning it, or rather should we feel inspired to move on to more enriching terrains regarding the heterogeneity of traditions, heterogeneity of languages, heterogeneity of cultures that make us such a daunting, such a difficult, at the same time, a highly beautifully complex nation? This is the subject that we are really open to discussion. Vaasanthi, the person who compared this session, has made my task much easier by giving a wonderful introduction to almost all the authors here. Something more that I would like to add from my own point is that almost all of them are they are recipients of many, many awards, particularly to mention Mridula, Garg and Subodh Sarkar have been recipients of Sahitya Academy Awards, and they would like to emphasize that they have not returned the awards. Although they too protest, they too have their own critique of the establishment, they have not returned.
What are they clapping?
This is something which they wanted me to emphasize, so I wanted to say that. Before throwing open the discussion...
They clapped them also who returned.
Okay, now I hope that we are going to have a very interesting discussion on this particular topic. Are we all speaking the same language? Just before I pass on the mic to the panelists, I just want to make one brief introductory remark, which is that almost all literary festivals are often plagued by one particular criticism that is very often leveled against them, which is that it is dominated by the English publishing, English texts and English media. Very often, particularly this particular edition of Bangalore Literature Festival has been at the receiving end of this criticism that was raised against it by the Kannada writers in particular. But this is a kind of a general criticism almost the entire Indian literature scenario keeps facing. But are we united? These are all writers representing different bhashas. Are we united in our grievance, or do our different linguistic cultures have different stories to narrate? I'm sure our stories are diverse as much as our languages are diverse. I would like to initiate a discussion by inviting, first of all, Mridula Garg to speak on this very, very engaging and interesting topic.
Thank you so much, Janaky. Can you people hear me? Yeah. Why don't you come forward a little, Be cozier instead of sitting so far back.
I can hear you, even at the back.
Okay, now I'll start with a very heartening news. I was just told by the proprietors of the bookstore here that yesterday, whole lot of Hindi and Kannada books were sold. In fact, the entire Hindi stock was sold, and now they're clamoring for more, so they're getting more books. So you will hear writers often bewail the declining readership. So this is one positive thing which I have come to know at the Bangalore Literature Festival.
Probably people will say Hindi is stealing the show.
And now, of course, we have a multiplicity of language, and we each write in our own language. But as far as this question is concerned, are we speaking the same language? So metaphorically, I would say yes, because our sensibilities, our sensitivities, our perceptions, our concerns are the same all over India with minor differences. I'd like to read just 4 lines from my novel in Hindi, but I'll not read it in Hindi because not everybody here will understand Hindi. So I'll read it in English, the language that everybody is expected to know. I'm reading it to show that this is what we are living in. This is the kind of state we are living in today. As long as there was a God, man sinned and put the responsibility of punishment on God. He managed to escape sometimes, and sometimes got the indulgence to sin now and be punished in another birth. When God died, man became responsible for everything. Now, when he rebels against society, he charges himself with the crime and pronounces the sentence. When we reach the zenith of civilization, all our crimes will be committed in unison, with proper confabulation and mutual consent to the sound of popular approbation. This is what is happening today. This is the tragedy that we are facing. And this is what we are all, in all languages, fighting with. Now, after this, I want to talk about the affinity between different languages. I would like to emphasize that as far as the various Indian languages are concerned, there is a whole lot of translation going on from one language to another. For example, I would like to give one example of Bhalchandra Nemade. Have you heard of Bhalchandra Nemade?
Marathi writer.
The Marathi writer who got
Jnanpith
the
award
Jnanpith award this year. Has anybody heard of him? His book is called Hindu. And we could read it in Hindi almost simultaneously with its publication in Marathi. Hindi is one language where almost every other language book gets translated. And we get to read them. I don't know how many Hindi books get translated in other languages, but I do know they get translated in Marathi and Malayalam. Now this book, Hindu, it starts with the Mohenjo-daro excavations, and it goes on to transcribe the Hindu culture from earliest times to now. And according to Nemade, Hindu is a culture, so that a Muslim can also be a Hindu. It is not a religion. It is not a dharma. So you can be a Muslim by religion, you will be an Indian by nationality, and you can be a Hindu, because this is a culture that we all live in. And this is another thing that we have to really be proud of, that we do not reduce this great culture to a religion and to Hindutva. We must differentiate between Hindu and Hindutva. Now yesterday when Ram Guha was talking about generally the threats to freedom of expression, there were one or two things which came to my mind which I definitely want to share with you. One was, he said that it is only now that writers are being eliminated, are being killed for their thoughts or their opinions or their writings. But that is not true. Pash, the great Punjabi poet, was eliminated in 1985. He was killed.
He said physically eliminated.
Physically eliminated. He was killed. If you are killed, you are physically eliminated. So he was killed in 1985. He was a Punjabi writer, a great Punjabi poet. But because he wrote in Punjabi, maybe he can be more easily forgotten than the other people. But we must say that when something happens to a Marathi writer, or a Marathi thinker, or to a Kannada writer, we who speak Hindi and Punjabi are very ready to embrace him and to protest against his killing. We do not easily forget. The other thing that he said was about, this is very amusing actually. I think it's not only writers who get carried away by their eloquence and make impossible statements, historians do too. And when Ram Guha said that it would have been very nice if Hussain could have been given the Bharat Ratna and Salman Rushdie the Padma Vibhushan. Now I'm fine with Hussain being given the Bharat Ratna, but I have to ask, how could you give the Padma Vibhushan to Salman Rushdie? He is not an Indian citizen. Exactly. But he is in UK, and we speak the same language as UK. So you see, we in India are closer to UK, to a writer in UK who speaks the same language as we do, than to a writer who writes in Punjabi. That is something again that we need to think upon. Another point that was made yesterday, of course, Ramgo had strong objections to being called Mekole Putra, but that is not an abusive term. It just states a fact. We are all of us speak English. I'm speaking in English to you out of the fear that you will not understand my Hindi. And you have a full right not to understand my Hindi because I do not understand Tamil. So, and I do not understand Kannada. I do understand Urdu though. So, another thing that he said was that, very correctly he said that you get noticed much more if you're writing in English. Not only when you are killed or arrested or your books are banned, but also when you write, particularly satire. Now I want to say, as a writer in Hindi, that satire is being written in Hindi on a scale where you can say, of a stature where you can say that he is the best satirist in India. And I'm talking about Manohar Shyam Joshi. Have you heard of Manohar Shyam Joshi? Some of them. Well, we have heard, in the north, we have all heard of Anantamurthy. It's a pity that in Karnataka, you have not heard of Manohar Shyam Joshi. Guha said that Parsis can tackle humor better than Hindus. Well, Manohar Shyam Joshi was not only a Hindu, he was a Brahmin, and that also from Kumaon, which is the most hidebound Brahmins in the country. And he wrote such scintillating satire, and he mocked at everything. He mocked at the political system, he mocked at the moral values, he mocked at people's everyday life, he mocked at their moral policing, he mocked at their mocking of sex, everything he mocked at. And let me tell you that he is translated in English. I'll mention two of his books, Tata Professor and The Perplexity of Harya. Both are published by Penguin. Please do try to read them. I've also indulged in writing satire. I wrote a column called Satire or Kataksh in India Today for 7 years. And it was taught in some American universities, and they were forever asking me, why is it not translated in English and published in India Today English also? I said, that is our tragedy. That is one of our tragedies, that whatever is published in English is translated immediately into Hindi, but whatever is written and published in Hindi, Tamil, Bangla, Urdu, Marathi, Kannada, whatever, is not translated in English. And you are the losers. You are the losers. So either we learn a few more Indian languages or we continue to be losers. Thank you.
So should we continue to be losers as far as our rich linguistic cultures are concerned? That's a question that is uppermost in our minds today, despite the tragic fact that we still have to communicate to each other in English, even when we have to talk about these laws. Now I would like to invite Dr. Mohammad Zaman Azurdah to continue the dialogue.
Thank you very much, Janaky. It's actually the topic, it's really intriguing, and I fail to understand, after all, from where to take the thread. My senior friend, Mridula ji, tried to make it very clear, but there are people like me also who understand very late, because I'm from a far-flung area, Kashmir, and immediately things do not climb that much that those could reach us. But I think between languages, when we talk of Indian languages, you see it's a mini world, so many cultures, so many languages, and then now all sorts of feelings also, as you have been listening to since yesterday. But there's another thing. That yesterday I was talking about that every Indian is at least a bilingual. But there are people who know more than 2, 3, 4 languages. But within a language, there's another problem. Once I was talking about language, that how to learn it, I said there are 2 ways of learning of a language. One is to learn a language, the other is to live a language. Very often we write in a language that we have learned. And we refuse to write in a language that we live. That's why Agha Shahid Ali wrote once to his father that I feel crippled without my mother tongue. though he wrote very good poems, Country Without a Post Office and all that, and he was a celebrity. And I am very sorry that we could not give him Sahitya Academy Award when he was finalized. Only 2 months earlier, he had got the American citizenship, so he was not an Indian citizen, so we could not give it. Then it went to Arundhati Roy, who refused to accept it. But when we express ourselves in a language that we have learned, and not in a language that we are living, you see what happens. In Urdu, she was, at least I'm happy that she knows that I can understand Urdu and not Tamil. In Urdu, for example, I tell you, there is दोस्त तो सबने सुना है, सहेली सबने सुना है. But when in Urdu we say ilaichi, dugana, sagana, Janaky, all these words, all these terms are for friends. Ilaichi, when two girls would meet, break an ilaichi, have 2 seeds, they would be ilaichis. If there would be 3, then they would be sagana, dugana, like this, and then Janaky also. So, unless you live a language, you cannot do justice with the feelings of yours. But we have a problem. We are alien for each other. Kannada writers, Kannada people do not know what's being written in Bangla, what's being written in Kashmir. But what was Radhakrishnan's statement once, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, that he said, all Indian literature is one, though written in many languages. Basically, human feelings are human feelings. You tease somebody, he or she will react. If you are hungry, you will cry for food. If you are suppressed, you will try to get up and revolt. As these feelings are everywhere in any language community, and we have been facing it, we have been saying it throughout. But this again, another thing within the language. These keep on changing. See, I think 20 years ago, we didn't have a term like crackdown in our language. We didn't have a term like civil curfew. We use these idioms as Kashmiri, not as we have borrowed from English. There are so many such expressions that you cannot imagine what civil curfew is. You cannot imagine what crackdown is. Because it's only, these are the expressions that are born or that are drawn from the situations, from the realities. And we very often, we writers, we very often, see, it was once Russell said about it that what I speak is not toto 100% understood by you. There are many losses. And not only at that level, when I conceive some idea, till I express it, in between also there are many losses. So this losses, the system of losses, process of losses goes on, but at the same time, it gains also. For example, in Persian, we say, Ahmakra sataish khush mein aayat, that fools like their praise. And do you know what has happened to it in Kashmiri? Ahmakra sitej khush mein aayat, that fools like confusions. Now it's very far away from the original. And in the same manner that we keep on, words keep on gaining. Example, I tell you, you say Hazrat is a very, very respectable word in Urdu language. And when I say, Are, bade Hazrat hai, it means a big chore. The Ustad is a the revered word. When I say, Ustadon ke Ustad hai, bada jeb katra hai, bada zabardasti hai. So, words also, and then another thing we forget, not only that everybody speaks his language, he has his ways of feeling, and then he has his ways for expressing. There's another thing, that there are not similar reactions, similar expressions for similar feelings. It's altogether different. Sometimes we feel that a man is laughing, but when you just try to peep into his inner, you will find that he is angry. He is making fun of you, or he is just not giving any importance to you. So this topic, it is actually intriguing, but I think that they might have thought over it, they might have pondered over it before just putting it on the paper. And this will perhaps lead us to something, and others also should get a chance so that we could join again.
As Professor said, it is a very elusive topic, and we are all trying our level best to engage with it. And now when we are moving on to the next panelist, I think we should continue on this note, where he spoke about how living a language is very important to write in it. And now I invite Vaasanthi, the very renowned Tamil writer, who's very close to Bangalore as well as to us Malayalis, because most of her books have been made into Malayalam films, very popular Malayalam films. And I must I must introduce her to this audience with another very relevant, very timely thing that she wrote in Scroll. And I think I wanted to mention that because it was in the context of the recent protest of the writers against this, in the context of the recent killings and murders of writers, where she said, writers in India all over speak in different languages, but they have one language, a common language that they speak in, that's the language of freedom. So on that note, I would like her to speak at length.
Thank you very much.
You just have to make it green.
Yeah, this topic is quite intriguing. Do we speak the same language? I was thinking about it. What do they... Can you hear?
Yes,
Can you hear? No. Okay. So this was so intriguing. I didn't know what it meant. And so to my mind, it had, it was not only a metaphor, but also it had political connotations I felt. And so because I was a little confused, I jotted down some points, which I'll share with you. So this, I really felt that it had political connotations. Pre-independent period saw brilliant writers who wrote in their own language or in the language they were living with. And a writer writing in a regional language could become an ideal for the whole country, like Tagore, for example.
Even
it was because of national fervor.
Subramanya Bharati.
Yeah, and so Tagore could become an ideal for a Tamil poet like Subramanya Bharati, living far down south. And since independence, there seems to be a change, a kind of a disintegration, more heterogeneous. We cannot think of any literary figure writing in regional language becoming a kind of an icon, an ideal for the whole country. As he mentioned, Radhakrishnan said, we speak the same language, though writing in different languages. Indian literature is just one. And Ezra Pound said there is no language for literature. Literature is one and same. But then unity and diversity in politics and culture have now become cliché. But yet, like the voices of the Bhakti poets, who sang all over the country, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, they all sang, how they were so disconnected at those times, but still they sang against rigidity and orthodoxy in the social structure then. We have now seen a remarkable phenomenon recently in the seemingly heterogeneous atmosphere. Writers from across the country, across the language boundaries, voiced the same concern against the perceived climate of intolerance. It was such an exhilarating moment for me to see so many voices speaking the same language. It was one concern, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. It was not against anything. It was against this atmosphere, perceived atmosphere of intolerance. And so many took independent decisions to join the march. It was not premeditated, or it was not a kind of an organized protest. It was just a spontaneous protest because writers felt that the freedom of expression was in danger. So if you overstress unity, and maintain there is only one India and one language, for example, then it becomes a political debate. Challenges emerge. In Tamil Nadu, for example, when Hindi was proclaimed as the official language, there were huge protests. because people of Tamil Nadu thought Tamil was older and richer than Hindi. And so Hindi should not be imposed on the Tamils. There was even the thought of succession from the state of Indian Union. And there was, somewhere a meeting point was arrived at, of course. The realization of a shared ethos, shared literature from time immemorial, apart from the existing political reality. It is amazing to discover, you know, in many of the poems written during the Sangam period, that was 3,000 years ago, they say, they have similar poems in Gatha Saptasati, written in Telugu, and many poems, love poems, and written in Pali and Prakrit and so on. And I do not know what a wonderful cultural integration there was in those times when communication skills were so primitive. And in 11th century, there was a poet in far down south called Kamban, who translated from original Sanskrit Valmiki Ramayana to Tamil, which itself is a big literary masterpiece. Post-independence, though Hindi was proclaimed as the official language, ironically, we became more Anglo-centric. English, we realized English had come to stay. We became more Anglo-centric, and English became a sort of a bridge between Bhasha writers and others. But then those who could not speak in English, articulate their expressions in English, I mean the writers, they felt let down. They felt kind of left out of the urban atmosphere.
Right.
You know, which was actually, it was a natural thing. It was easy for writers in English to be better known. The front yard of the Indian literary world hardly knew what was happening in the backyard. The Bhasha writers were spinning alternative words. We have a stretch of 1,000 kilometers of linguistically exciting map it is. They were vibrant, down to the earth. They speaking in different idioms and metaphors. Unfortunately, you can't translate them into English, a European language. They were digging deep, you know, into the kind of roots to find meaning.
That's true.
So this is what is happening. That is why, and when Salman Rushdie and like Naipaul speak words that are intentionally derogated to the Bhasha writers, naturally they felt kind of, you know, they were thinking that they got a raw deal.
Right.
That was the thing. Yeah. But then about the Tamil scene, I'll come later to say that it is a very vibrant scene.
Right. Yes, so as she has pointed out, each bhasha has a different story to narrate. So now let us hear how it is faring in the Bengali scenario from none other than Subodh Sarkar, who is also interestingly editing a bilingual journal. So he should be knowing how it is to juggle between languages, which is very rarely you have some English issues also. So as a poet, a translator and an editor, let's hear it from Subodh. Yes.
Thank you.
Also, I want to say something more. There is some joyous event that we should all celebrate with Subodh, because just yesterday he has been informed that he has been conferred D.Lit for his poetry by
one university.
Thank you.
So that is an award and a recognition that we must celebrate together here.
I would like to go straight into the heart of the matter. To begin with, I feel that India is destroying India. This is the statement that I would like to begin with. How? As an Indian writer, quote unquote, this is how I have been described. Indian writer writing in Bengali. Mridula ji, Indian writer writing in Hindi. He is writing, he's Indian writer writing in Urdu or Kashmiri, whatever, in Tamil. So, you know, I do not understand Tamil. She does not understand Bengali. He doesn't understand me. I can understand Hindi. I cannot understand her language. And we are all speaking in linked language. The youngest language in India. The linked language, that is quote unquote, we are not speaking English, it is Indian English. And this Indian English is the youngest language of the country we are living in. What a paradoxical situation for all of us. It's a cruel paradox that we are living in. That we are Indians, we hardly communicate in our own languages, and we have to speak English. What is the result? Let me begin with my home. My son is doing English. Doing his master's in English. He does not read my poems. And his teachers are very proud of my son because he is doing very well in English. He'll be going to America or somewhere else. Why they are proud? Had my son been doing masters in Bengali, they would not have been proud. This is what is happening to every language. My son, yesterday what happened, I called up my son from dinner table. I told him that I met Neil. Neil is sitting here. I heard his poem yesterday. Fantastic poems. I was really angry when I was hearing his poems. And I wanted to communicate with my son because I knew that if I could say that I discovered a great Tamil poet, he would not have been interested. Or a Hindi poet, or a Urdu poet. He wouldn't mind. I said Neil is an African-American poet from Philadelphia and writing in English and is brilliant. What he told me, please bring home his poems. No, it is not, I'm not saying against Neil. I'm saying against myself. We, the fathers, we created this India. And the fathers are now not at all aware of the fact what is going to happen. I have been writing my poems for the last 35 years in my own language against a death sentence drafted for my language. Already the death sentence has been drafted by whom I am not sure. Maybe political leaders, maybe the language leaders, maybe the writers, maybe the fathers, maybe the parents, all of us. We have drafted the death certificate for Bangla, for Tamil, for Malayalam. In spite of the fact that I would like to tell you that as far as Bengali as a language is concerned, we have 250 million speakers all over the world. It's because that we have Bangladesh, where Bengali is spoken, and only Bengali is spoken in Bangladesh. No other language is spoken. So we have speakers all over the world in this sense, that all over India in this sense, in Assam, you have in Tripura, another state, also in Orissa, in Bihar. So you find that east of India was Bengali as a language had that hegemony, even during the time of the colonial period. Now, the point is, the war that we are fighting, this war is a more difficult war now than this war that we fought in the time of the colonial period. They didn't do that much damage to India as the neo-colonialists of India are doing to India. This is a terrible thing which is happening in India. I write my poems, and I have published already more than 25 books. My books sell well. If I read my poems in Calcutta, I have more than 1,000 people listening to my poetry. I should be happy. I get awards. I get invited to international festival like this one. Why should I be angry? Because I cannot tolerate this kind of callousness of the Indian fathers, of the Indian leaders, of the Indian politicians. They are destroying As for example, Amiri Baraka. You remind me of Amiri Baraka as you were reading your poems yesterday. Amiri Baraka said almost a similar thing in Chicago. He said, you, the USA, you are destroying my instruments. You are destroying my boom, boom, ba-boom, boom. Right? Am I right? So it happened there. It is happening here now. They are not only destroying the language, it's not the language crisis. It is at the same time, they are destroying my music, my culture, my ethnicity, my dress, everything. Customs, everything. Now, it's a time to make you Indian, quote unquote, and to force you to speak the way they want you to. It cannot happen in India. It's now almost at an alarming stage that we should protest. I think this situation is more terrible than any other situation in the country as far as literature is concerned. So intolerance, of course, is a burning issue now. But I believe that as a writer, as a Bhasha writer, there is a great irony in this division, you know. Who gave you the audacity to call me a Bhasha writer and somebody writing in English, he is a language writer, he is an English writer? Who gave you this right? I thought when it was about, say, 2 decades, 3 decades ago, my professors used to playfully say that you write in Bhasha, we write in English. It was a joke. And now it has become a serious matter. So even it is written here that we are writing in Bhasha and they're writing in English. Why this war? Why Bengali is a Bhasha and why English is a language? Do you have any answer? This silence is really golden. Please let me finish.
You will get a chance to speak. Just a minute.
So this is why I said English, not English, I said Indian English. There's a big difference between these two. So I believe, to conclude, I would like to say just one point. I have one more point. I have. So I believe that just one more point, just in 2 sentences. I never feel that I have been an exile of my language. But when I come to Bangalore, when I come to Delhi, when I come to a remote part of my country, I feel very sad. And I'm sure it happens to all of my colleagues, all of my fellow writers of India, that you have to read your poems or your fiction in a language that the people understand in India now. This is the greatest tragedy that we are going through. And at the same time, I would like to say, I'm optimistic. I would like to say that my son will come back to his origin. This is also happening to other section in my society. One day he will realize what he missed. Because we have a great tradition in Bangla. Sunil Gangopadhyay, for example, Sunil Ganguly, he used to say just one line. He used to tell me, Subodh, I am happy that I am understood in my own language. That's all. Yes, at the same time, that's not all. When she was quoting Ezra Pound, I just whispered into her ears that this is bullshit for me. This is really great to say. I'm talking about Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound, why did he say that Chinese language is a Chinese language? Is Chinese. Is Mandarin is Mandarin. Bengali is Bengali. Hindi is Hindi. Tamil is Tamil. Don't misguide the world readers. A language is a language is a language. And the question is, and language is not just a language. It has that, you know, the skin, the blood of the culture. So I feel that, let us all hope that my son will come back to his language.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Subodh. Alienated from one's own language, I think that is the greatest tragedy that we are all being engulfed by day. And Subodh has hit it very sharply when he says that the language, it's not just a question of a literary festival. It's a language our children choose to learn in school. There starts the alienation from the language. When our children decide to go for English and not for Malayalam or Urdu or Hindi, there the tragedy begins, or Tamil. And the volunteers are signaling the time limit to me, so we need to, kind of wrap up our discussion in a few minutes from now. Do we throw open the session to questions from the audience?
But we should also speak, no? It's
for a
while.
A couple of people who would like to talk also. So what do we do? I think Mridula wants to intervene in the discussion, or do we take questions?
I just wanted to say that this Bhasha, there is no literature without Bhasha or language. So English also, if English is not a Bhasha, then there is no literature in English.
Bhasha is a generic word.
It's a generic word, but the point is that it's a tragedy also, and it's a convenience also, that we can at least communicate to each other. But as I said, what we need is more translations from one language to another. So that when I'm reading in Hindi, Subodh has already read it in Bengali and understands it. When Nemade reads his book in Marathi, I've already read it in Hindi and I can understand it. That is my optimism, that one day that will happen. No questions.
Yeah, if there are questions, we don't have time for many, but just a selection.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
कल मैं एक कविता पढ़ रहा था, जड़, you know, जड़ जो पेड़ के नीचे होती है ना,
हाँ, जड़,
रूट्स, हाँ। तो जब हम अपने जड़ों से दूर हो जाते हैं, तो जो ऊपर उसके फल लग रहे हैं, फूल लग रहे हैं, वो सब बेकार हो जाते हैं। तो जड़ ही मेन चीज है। अगर हम अपनी भाषा से दूर चले जाएंगे, तो हम अपनी जड़ों से ही बहुत दूर चले जाएंगे, ये मेरा मानना है। मगर जैसा साहब ने कहा अभी कि इंग्लिश जो है हमारी, एक्चुअली प्रॉब्लम ये है कि आफ्टर एवरी 200 किलोमीटर्स अवर लैंग्वेज चेंज इन इंडिया। सो इट्स अ वेरी वेरी कॉम्प्लेक्स कंट्री व्हेन यू थिंक अबाउट द लैंग्वेज। एंड सपोज आई एम फ्रॉम उत्तराखंड। इन उत्तराखंड इफ यू डोंट नो गढ़वाली, you cannot, no work can be done. If you speak in the Hindi there, same in Karnataka or anywhere. So everybody is fighting here that our language everybody should speak. So the situation is very complex. And I think Lord Macaulay 200 years back, what he thought, that everybody should speak in English and culture should be changed. So what I am saying, so the English is, why English is so famous in India, because it is linked with Rozgar, employment. So our languages, if linked with employment, then only they will come up. That I want to say to you, sir.
I would like to take it. ये उर्दू में तो एक ज़माने से ही डिबेट चलती रही है कि हम अगर उर्दू में लिखेंगे, उर्दू पढ़ेंगे, तो उसके बाद रोज़गार कहाँ मिलेगा। You see, language work as your mothers. माँ आपकी लूली है, लंगड़ी है, कानी है, हेल्दी है, ब्यूटीफुल है या अगली है, वो माँ है। आप उससे ये एक्सपेक्ट करें कि वो आपकी खिदमत के बदले आपको क्या देगी, that's irrelevant. एक बात है, in India, you see, prior to partition, Urdu was a little closer to these languages. For example, बंगाल में अगर आप देखेंगे झगड़ा कर रहे हैं लोग, तो मुंसिफी कई बार आएगा। Yesterday, Professor Hampa was talking about these terms, the judicial terms, कैसे हमने फारसी से लिए हैं या उर्दू में भी वो हैं। Because of certain reasons, we have to oppose Urdu, take to Hindi, but Hindi could not get that status in our minds throughout the country. अंग्रेजी ने वो जगह ले ली। मेरे ख्याल में लैंग्वेज के साथ यहाँ की पॉलिटिक्स ने, पॉलिटिकल थिंकिंग ने थोड़ा बहुत इंटरफेयर किया, जिसकी वजह से ये हो रहा है। अदरवाइज एक बात ये है, मैं कश्मीरी हूँ, आप उत्तराखंड के हैं, गढ़वाली बोलते हैं, सुबोध बंगाली है, बंगाली बोलता है, बंगाली में लिखता है। हाउ कुड वी कनेक्ट टू ईच अदर? मेरा ख्याल है कि अंग्रेजी कम से कम इतना तो एक ब्रिज का काम करती है कि किसी हद तक हम उसके करीब जा सकते हैं। ये अलग बात है कि दैट वी आर ट्राइंग टू किस अवर बिलवेड थ्रू समबडी एल्सेस लिप्स, दैट इज समथिंग डिफरेंट। लेकिन एक बात ये है कि अगर अंग्रेजी भी ना होती या अगर हिंदी या उर्दू को ये दर्जा न मिले, हम एक दूसरे के लिए बिल्कुल ही अजनबी बन जाएंगे, देयर विल बी नथिंग। अच्छा, दूसरी बात ये है कि यानी कभी कभी तो ये भी होता है कि वो लैंग्वेजेस फेल। फॉर एग्जाम्पल आई टेल यू, एक क्राउडेड सिटी में एक लड़की घर से निकली, उसको कॉलेज जाना था इस साइड में, उसके अपोजिट एक लड़का निकला घर से, उसको इस डायरेक्शन में जाना था। स्ट्रीट वाज सो बिजी कि ये अगर क्रॉस करने की कोशिश करते इट वुड नॉट बी पॉसिबल। अगर ये चिल्लाते, दोनों एक दूसरे को न सुनते, तो फिर ऐसे में कुछ डिवाइसेस ऐसी होती हैं। एंड विद डू अपॉलॉजीज टू जेंटलमैन सिटिंग हियर, गर्ल्स आर शार्पर। उस लड़की ने हाथ उठाए, यूं दिखाया, यूं दिखाया, यूं दिखाया, see me at 5 o'clock around the corner. They had communicated. Now there's difference between literature and communication. Literature is something different than communication because it is beyond communication. There are so many things with it. It's not just a news bulletin. So we will have to face these difficulties, but at the same time, we should feel obliged to those who translate our things, bring them in Hindi or English, so that we reach what is the, you see, what does a writer want? He doesn't want to become rich. She doesn't want to become very famous, and she wants or he wants to reach people, more and more people. And these two languages are becoming vehicles for that. And there's no other way. That's what I feel.
Yeah, thank you, sir. We have less than 10 minutes now. There is one question here. Yeah.
What I wanted to ask the panel was...
stick to the point.
Yes, definitely. We have state worship coming up in the forms of flags and state anthems, especially after the linguistic territories were created in India post-independence, with Andhra Pradesh being one of the first states. So I would like to ask, is this state worship based on language? Isn't it a hindrance towards national integration? Do you think this is going to help our country? Although the state worshippers do proclaim that...
State worshippers, you say?
Yeah. I mean, we have across many southern states, I am not very well aware if not, you have...
You are saying this sticking to loyalty to one's language and culture, is it going to be a hurdle?
Yeah, isn't it not going to be a hurdle, the state worship? Isn't it not going to be a hurdle towards national integration of our country?
You take it? Let me
take the first.
This heterogeneous thing is the beauty of India. And you just cannot think that, you're going, it is against this thing, anti-national or anything to think about in your own language.
Can I answer that? Can I take the question?
Yeah, what is it?
No, actually, even when the linguistic states were created, each state, a number of languages are spoken. Why don't we look at India the way we look at Europe? Each country in Europe has its own language.
Its culture.
And it's smaller than each state of India in which a language is spoken. So if Bengali is spoken in Bengal, it's like French is spoken in France.
Yes.
And Malayalam is spoken in Kerala, it's like German is spoken in Germany. So if we don't look at it in a political way, if we look at it in a geographic way, and I would certainly not agree with you, sir, that हमारी माँ लूली लंगड़ी कुछ भी हो, क्योंकि हमारी भाषा हमारी माँ लूली लंगड़ी नहीं है.
I was talking in reference with the Rozgar.
हमारी भाषा समृद्ध है, हम उसमें लिखेंगे और बोलेंगे. रोजगार एक अलग चीज है. हम लिखेंगे फिर भी अपनी भाषा. अगर हमें रोजगार जर्मन में करना पड़े या रशियन में करना पड़े या स्विस में करना पड़े, फिर भी हम लिखेंगे अपनी भाषा में. मैं ये कहना चाहती हूँ कि साहित्य पढ़ना लिखना कलाकार के लिए, साहित्यकार के लिए, फिल्मकार के लिए, कार्टूनिस्ट के लिए उसका अपना अपना माध्यम जो है वो एक अलग चीज है. और सिर्फ कम्युनिकेट करना, सिर्फ ये पूछना चाय पियेंगे, ऑफिस जाएंगे, कौन सी फिल्म देखी है, ये अलग चीज है. इन दोनों के बीच अंतर करना बहुत जरूरी है. माफ कीजिएगा मैं हिंदी में बोल गई.
No, I would just react to this point. I never meant it. Since he was talking of Rozgar, connected with the language, in those terms, I said that whether she can give you anything or not, in lieu of your services, you have to be with her, you have to stand by her. That is something different. But it's actually, we have to be loyal to that also, and then we have to communicate also. Please.
So just, there is one difference, as we have so many languages in India, and there are so many languages in Europe. But the difference is, you go to Sweden, you go to Italy, you go to even to a small part of Europe, that they are so serious to keep their language intact, in spite of the fact that they have the mosaic of the European culture. But it is not happening in India. Just a minute, Bengali, my word against the fact is that Bengali,
Mridula is optimistic.
I would have been the happiest man on the panel if Bengali were spoken in Calcutta the way it was used 100 years before. It is not being done. So it is an alloy. An alloy is at work everywhere. So that is the problem that we are, that is the challenge that we have now. The Indian writers have this challenge.
We just have 3 minutes. There are so many hands up.
Last question.
Last question. Saying last question. Okay. Last person.
Take a mic. Give him the mic, no?
Oh, he has a mic already.
No, he doesn't.
Please make it fast. There's just one more person.
My name is Venkatesh Kamar. She told that we will, whatever Rozgar we will do in the Rozgar, but we will write in our language. But children are being taught only one language. What do? They won't understand even my own.
That's different.
We are not teaching our children our own mother tongue, whether it is in.
That's fault of chief,
This
fault
you,
of
sir,
parents.
we are all responsible.
It has taken a different turn.
Schools are not teaching.
Right.
We are collectively responsible, sir, for the situation.
Parents are more responsible than the system.
No, in Tamil Nadu,
Please pass the mic to this gentleman here.
30 seconds to read my point?
Yeah.
No, I think.
Sir, excuse me. I would like to ask you why we are denying our link language.
We have another session.
And my question is, why we are denying the link language Hindi to our nation? Once we go to China, Chinese speak. Once we go to Russia, Russian spoken. But everybody other than Hindi, everybody talks and there is a guilty census. This has been done right after independence. And Hindi thopi da rahi hai, Hindi thopi da rahi hai. This is a wrong notion. It's a link language, market language,
Yeah, we get
commerce
it.
language. 1 minute, let me just conclude one topic. I have been teaching English. Presently I am lecturer.
It's a different question.
We always teach Jack and Jill went to. Why not Ram and Shah went to the Hill?
Yeah, right.
Why do we always put such a name with difficult creative?
But why Hindi? Why not
It's
Urdu?
going to
Why
be a
not
highly
Tamil? Why not
debatable
Tamil?
area we are entering. When we say
Oh,
Hindi
see,
should be
this
the
is politics.
language.
Politics coming.
I'm so sorry. Please continue the debate outside the tent in a very informal surrounding. They're going to be here. Subodh would like to conclude the session with a poem. Otherwise, we won't have time for that.
Do you want to hear?
He has a poem to.
Do you want to hear?
Who will not?
Yeah, please.
Who will
Let
not?
me stand. I cannot read my poems sitting on a chair. Yeah. Coming closer.
Something.
I choose to read the first 2 stanzas in Bengali, then followed by English translation.
Tell him to take care.
This poem in Bengali is called.
Don't jump.
Don't jump. Don't go very close to audience.
I don't mind. So, Monipurer Ma. I wanted you to hear my Bangla. নগ্ন উঠে দাঁড়ালো আমার মণিপুরের মা এই মায়ের দু চোখ থেকে চোখ পেয়েছি আশির নৌক ভাষা পেয়েছি পেয়েছি সারে গামা নগ্ন উঠে দাঁড়ালো আমার মণিপুরের মা যা খুশি তাই করতে পারে আর্মি আর পুলিশ পথে কারফিউ জলে 4 মিনার কারো কিছু বলার নেই বলার কথা না নগ্ন উঠে দাঁড়ালো আমার Manipure remark. Now I read in English translation the whole poem. I just read 2 stanzas in Bengali. Just one thing I would like to inform before I read this poem in English. You know that in Manipur, what happened, you know, since 1958, Indian Army is empowered to shoot any time, to rape any girl, and they are not to account for. This draconian law still continues in that part of India. So when Manorama was abducted and raped and was left back, then the mothers, the innocent mothers, came down from the kitchen to the street, stood naked in front of the Assam Rifles as a protest against this draconian law. Mothers of Manipur, naked, they stood up. My mothers of Manipur, my eyes are born from their eyes. All that I speak is from them, from their music. Naked, they stood up, my mothers of Manipur. Can the army and the police do anything they like? Nobody is allowed in the streets. Only smoke goes up. Nobody can speak up. No way to protest. Naked, they stood up, my mothers of Manipur. Army jeeps move around under the sky. Army jeeps sing our national song. There is unbuttoned in one jeep. A girl reeled into the jeep. Should the girl go home? Should the girl die under the sky? The police have erased her name. What's her address? A village outside Imphal? This is what happens every day. A young girl is found unconscious. Somewhere else, her younger sister missing. Only their scabs flutter from trees. But in the month of July, the limit is passed. Naked they stood up, the breast milk givers. Let the world watch her veins, the veins in their chest. How do you feel when you see your own mother naked? As Assam Rifles shut down the gates, I feel as I did in the womb. I feel the river Ganga streaming out hot. The mothers of Manipur, redefined mothers. Where mothers walk naked in protest, colonels, commanders, what did you do? Do you think your mom still remains mom? She is burning. She is burning. She is burning inside every mother. A mother within mother.
That we come to the end of this rather very passionate session. I'm sure it has triggered off a lot of questions which cannot be resolved here. All these writers are going to be here. Please carry on the discussion in other venues. Thank you. Thank you all. Very, very good.
Thank you. Thank them on our behalf.
Yeah,
Can we please have our thanks said through applause? Thank you so much, Janaky, for such a well-moderated session. Thank you. Well, the thing is, Bhasha, in any case, is so close to our heart. Language, mother tongue. And when you have an entire session on that, and you also have a poem on the mother, besides the mother tongue, actually read out, it was certainly gooseflesh moments for so many of us. Thank you so much for this panel.